So, you guys are not going to believe this, but I'm actually going to agree with AJ Plus for once in their part 4 video of their immigration series. I actually think that private prisons shouldn't be a thing. I think that the handling, detaining, and punishing of criminals is something that should be left up to the government because they broke the laws of, well, the government.
There's a lot of talk about the expected rise of immigrant detentions and deportations under President Trump. So, while recently on assignment in Arizona, I visited a privately run for-profit detention center named Eloy. Now, private prisons and privately run detention facilities have already received widespread criticism for their operations, which have no public oversight or accountability. At least 137 people died in immigrant-only prisons since 1998. A report by The Nation magazine found that people in these prisons frequently suffer through painful symptoms and die of treatable diseases. And these facilities are so unsafe that in some cases, detainees actually request that they be put in solitary confinement so that they can be protected from other inmates.
But there are mainly two things that I do actually disagree with them on this video. Is that one, they are again using the term immigrants instead of illegal immigrants or criminal immigrants in order to tug at people's heartstrings and make them think that they're all innocent. And two, this.
Anyone who is undocumented in the country is at risk of being deported.
They complain again about the punishment of illegal immigration and illegal immigrants. Again, with the illegal immigration apologism at its best, people. So, if I all in all agree with AJ Plus on this video, well then what is worth making a 10-minute video about then, Zach? Well, obviously I wouldn't put you guys through 10 minutes of me just saying, yeah, I agree with you, AJ Plus. I mean, that would be so freaking boring. But I do generally agree with this video. On the surface message that it tells. But if only this video did not bleed of so much irony on AJ Plus's part. You know why that is? Because AJ Plus is ultimately owned by the Al Jazeera media network. The Al Jazeera media network is the most viewed news network in the entire Arab world, and they are owned by the Al Thani family, and more specifically by Hamad bin Thamer Al Thani, who is related to the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, and the rest of the Al Thani family that rules Qatar with an iron fist, unchecked. They are the royal family. And Qatar has a series of human rights violations that I will explain while reading this article from Human Rights Watch. Labor reforms enacted in Qatar in 2015 failed to provide meaningful protection to low-paid migrant workers. Despite several years of sustained criticism over its mistreatment of migrant workers who continue to arrive in huge numbers and are acutely vulnerable to trafficking and forced labor, the reforms still require workers to secure their employer's permission to change jobs or leave the country, preventing them from leaving abusive situations. Having previously placed few restrictions on the activities of international media, authorities detained and interrogated two groups of foreign journalists who were attempting to report on migrant workers living and working conditions. So there is the first red flag in this article. The Qatari government, which is ruled all by the royal Al Thani family, which owns indirectly AJ Plus, is punishing people for doing the same profession that AJ Plus does. AJ Plus, where is your criticism of the Al Thani family, and particularly of Qatar? Low-paid migrant workers, mostly from countries in Asia and to a lesser extent Africa, continue to be abused and exploited. Workers typically pay exorbitant recruitment fees, and employers regularly take control of their passports when they arrive in Qatar. Many migrant workers complain that their employers fail to pay their wages on time, if at all. The kafala sponsorship system ties a migrant worker's legal residence to their employer or sponsor. The system also requires that foreign workers obtain exit permits from their sponsors when they wish to leave Qatar. In practice, this enables employers to arbitrarily prevent their employees from leaving Qatar and returning to their home country. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that pretty much sounds like freaking slavery. I mean, They are preventing people in Qatar. Business owners and the government ultimately itself is restricting, if not forbidding, people from leaving Qatar. I mean, say what you will about America, about how they employ illegal immigrants and therefore do not pay them a fair wage. Well, guess what? That business owner is breaking the law in hiring an illegal immigrant in the first place. So it is not sanctioned by our government for them to be hiring illegal immigrants. In fact, it is illegal to do so. But for here in Qatar, even if you are a legal migrant worker, you are held against your own will. You are paid a low wage. And with Qatar, you're not even allowed to leave the country. Here in the United States, if you're an immigrant, a non-citizen immigrant, you're allowed to leave the country. It's just that you are restricted from coming back into the country until a few years later. Domestic workers are explicitly excluded from the labor law and as such are further vulnerable to abuse and exploitation. In addition to labor abuses, many domestic workers face physical and sexual abuse. A law on domestic workers continues to remain in draft form and has not been made public. AJ Plus, where is the criticism towards your bosses, the Al-Thani family, for allowing this shit to go down to workers in the Qatar country? In October, Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani issued Law Number 21 of 2015 on the regulation of the entry and exit of expatriates and their residency. The new sponsorship law refers to recruiters instead of sponsors, but it leaves the fundamentally exploitative characteristics of the kafala system in place. So there were attempts to try and change the law in Qatar, but they were immediately struck down. AJ Plus, where is your criticism of that? Authorities detained a group of journalists from West German Broadcasting in March and a group of BBC journalists in May. In both cases, police officers confiscated equipment including memory cards and phones, and both groups were questioned separately by state security officers and the public prosecutor. Authorities released the German journalists after 14 hours of questioning, but the BBC team spent 2 nights in detention. Qatar's government communications office said the BBC crew had trespassed on private property, which is illegal in Qatar. And I bet if Donald Trump were to order for the arrest of journalists in this country, the United States, AJ Plus would be right on it and reaming against Donald Trump for that. But do they go criticizing their bosses, the Al-Thani family, and the Qatari government for this crap? Heck no. Qatar's penal code contains provisions that are inconsistent with free speech standards, notably Article 134, which provides for 5 years imprisonment for anyone convicted of criticizing the emir or vice emir. Like President and Vice President of the United States, the emir and vice emir are basically the same thing of Qatar, except they have supreme rule. And so basically, in Human Rights Watch, they are saying that even though that AJ Plus in the United States has the right to criticize the president, they would not have the right in Qatar to criticize the supreme leaders of that country. AJ Plus, the irony bleeds. Women's rights, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Provisions of Law Number 22 of 2006, Qatar's first codified law to address issues of family and personal status, discriminates against women. Under Article 36, a marriage contract is valid when a woman's male guardian concludes the contract and 2 male witnesses are present. Article 57 forbids husbands from hurting their wives physically or morally, but Article 58 states that it is a wife's responsibility to look after the household and to obey her husband. So, at least here in America, legally, a woman can be the provider for the household. She can go out and work while the man is actually the supporter and caretaker of the children. But in Qatar, that is not allowed. Other than general provisions on assault, the penal code does not criminalize domestic violence. Marital rape is not a crime. And where is your criticism on that, AJ Plus? Qatar's penal code punishes sodomy with 1 to 3 years in prison, and under Sharia law, which applies to Muslims, any individual convicted of zina, sex outside of marriage, can be sentenced to flogging non-married persons, or the death penalty married persons. So I'm kind of comparing apples to oranges in this scenario, I know. I mean, AJ Plus is criticizing private prisons in the United States, whereas in Qatar they do not have private prisons, except for those ran by the Al Thani family, which the Al Thani family is basically the government of Qatar, and those prisons are basically, well, they are government ran. So it's an apples to oranges comparison, but it still doesn't rule out the fact that they go criticizing inhumane treatment of inmates in private prisons. Well, that's not the only thing that they criticize in the video, but that's one of the things that they criticize in their Part 4 immigration video. But at the same time, they're not criticizing their bosses for inhumane treatment of people in their country. Let's see, you guys. Do you criticize the Al Thani family? Oh, you don't even have any videos on the Al Thani family. So where's your criticism of them again, AJ Plus? And to end off this video, let me iterate that I am not trying to defend private prisons. Again, I am against that idea. But coming from AJ Plus, that is completely ironic, if not hypocritical, that they go criticizing the United States for having those and the inhumane treatment of private prisons, but at the same time, their leaders, the Al Thani family, is responsible for even more heinous shit. Hey guys, if you liked the video, smash that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe. If you want to see me respond to a specific video or article, comment down below with a link to the said article or video, and I might consider responding to it. Thanks for watching the video, and God bless.